a lot of people are missing money. And I don't mean a few dollars here and there. I'm talking about billions. The National Council on Aging has said that roughly $30 billion every single year goes unclaimed, uncollected, or simply never reaches the people who are actually eligible for it. And let's be honest for a second, the rich and powerful are not the ones losing that money. They have attorneys, accountants, financial planners, and lobbyists making sure they get every dollar available to them. Regular retirees, disabled workers, widows, divorced spouses, and low-income seniors do not have teams like that. Most people are out here trying to figure this stuff out on their own, and the system does not make it easy. That's why we keep having this conversation. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, SSI, SSDI, survivor benefits, divorced spouse benefits, retirement timing, work rules, reporting rules, all of it gets buried under bureaucracy, confusing letters, mixed messages, and bad advice. And that bad advice is getting worse. For years, there was misinformation online. But now, with AI, cheap editing tools, and fake authority, there are even more people making videos that sound official while saying almost nothing. They slap a flag in the background, put a serious title on the screen, use words like confirmed, urgent, or just announced, and suddenly, tens of thousands of retirees think they need to panic before breakfast. That's the real problem. A lot of these videos are built to trigger fear, not to give clarity. They want you anxious. They want you clicking. They want you watching 17 minutes of dramatic music and vague warnings so they can collect ad revenue while you sit there wondering if you're about to lose your check. You'll see titles about massive April changes, emergency deposits, bonus checks, new rebates, surprise Medicare rules, or secret Social Security programs nobody told you about. Then you watch the whole thing and realize they never answered the question the title created. They just kept repeating the same language in slightly different ways until the video ended. That's not help. That's manipulation dressed up like information. Now, can real changes happen? Absolutely. And that's where people get confused, because not everything online is fake. Some warnings are real. Some issues really are serious. For example, I've talked again and again about the long-term funding problem in Social Security, because that is not some made-up scare tactic. That is a real policy issue that has been kicked down the road for decades. If lawmakers continue to do nothing, then benefit reductions become a real possibility in the future. That's not drama. That's math. The problem is when people take a real concern, strip away the context, and then use it to create panic about deadlines, checks, applications, or policy changes that don't actually exist the way they describe them. And then you get the other side of misinformation, which is the fantasy money side. The so-called stimulus updates, tariff rebates, mystery deposits, Doge dividends, emergency bonus checks, all this stuff that keeps circulating because people want good news. I get it. If you're retired, living on a fixed income, paying more at the grocery store, paying more for prescriptions, and trying to stretch every dollar, of course you want to believe there's extra money coming. But wanting something to be true does not make it true. If you didn't receive official notice, if the agency itself didn't announce it clearly, and if the explanation is vague, overly dramatic, and designed to keep you watching instead of informing you, then that is a red flag. Another one I keep seeing is people talking about future COLA numbers like they already know the answer. They don't. We do not know the exact cost of living adjustment that far in advance. People will take partial inflation data, a headline, or a guess, and then present it like a final decision has already been made. That creates confusion for no reason. Retirees start budgeting around rumors. They start telling friends something is confirmed when it isn't. And the same thing happens with travel myths and bank account myths. I've seen people flat out say Social Security is watching everybody's bank account or tracking every trip people take. That is simply not true for the average retirement beneficiary. Here's where the nuance matters. If someone is receiving SSI, supplemental security income, that is different from regular retirement benefits. SSI is a means-tested program. It's based on limited income and limited resources. Because it is a welfare-based program, there are reporting responsibilities that come with it. If money comes in, if resources change, if living arrangements change, if someone is outside the country too long, those things can matter. That is not the same as saying every retiree on Social Security is being monitored the same way. Retirement benefits, spouse benefits, survivor benefits, and SSDI are different categories with different rules. People mash them together into one scary narrative, and that's how myths spread faster than facts. So let's talk about what actually helps people, because that's the part too many videos skip. Timing matters. Filing matters. Understanding which program you're on matters. And a lot of people lose money not because they were denied, but because they waited unnecessarily or didn't know a benefit even existed. A common example is somebody turning full retirement age and wondering whether they can start the process before the birthday month. In many cases, yes, you can start early. You don't have to wait until the exact day you blow out the candles on the cake. If you're already in the system, especially if you've already enrolled in Medicare, the process can be much smoother than people expect. But here is where I want people to really pay attention, because sometimes the question being asked is not the only issue in the room. Somebody might say, my ex-husband is turning 67 and wants to retire. Can he file now or does he wait? And that sounds like a simple timing question. But sometimes the bigger question hiding underneath is this. Have you been waiting on him because you thought you couldn't claim anything until he filed? If that's what happened, that could be a costly misunderstanding. There are divorced spouse situations where the ex does not need to be collecting yet, as long as the rules are otherwise met, including the length of the marriage, your age, and the amount of time since the divorce. That is exactly how people lose money. Not because the system sent them a giant red warning sign, but because nobody explained the rules clearly enough for them to act. If you were married at least 10 years, if you meet the age requirements, and if the divorce has lasted long enough under the applicable rules, then there may be a path available that has nothing to do with whether your former spouse already started benefits. And no, filing on that record does not mean you are taking money out of their pocket or hurting a new spouse. People avoid asking questions because they think it's messy, embarrassing, or confrontational, when in reality, it may simply be a matter of learning what the law already allows. The same thing happens with SSI and SSDI confusion. Someone will say, why did SSI stop when SSDI got approved? Well, the answer depends on the setup. If it's the same person and their disability insurance amount is high enough, then the SSI can go away because SSI is designed to supplement very low income up to a limit, not stack endlessly on top of a larger payment. If it's a spouse situation, then household income rules can come into play because, again, SSI is means tested. That's what people need explained, not a scary headline. Not a vague warning, just a clean explanation of what bucket the person is in and what rule applies to that bucket. Now let's talk about filing age, because this is one of those topics where fear and habit cause a lot of unnecessary hesitation. Some people assume they must wait until full retirement age because they are still working, and they think if they file too early, Social Security will just take it all back. That is not always true. Earnings rules apply before full retirement age, yes, but the limits change in the year you reach full retirement age. And after you actually reach that age, the earnings test no longer works the same way. In plain English, once you hit full retirement age, the idea that you can't work and collect benefits the same way simply falls apart. A lot of people never revisit that assumption, so they delay without really understanding the trade-off. And that trade-off matters. If your full retirement age is this year, waiting might increase your monthly benefit somewhat compared to filing a few months earlier, but waiting also means giving up checks you could have received in the meantime. So the real question is not just, what is the biggest monthly number? The real question is, what is the best overall decision for my situation? Maybe waiting is right for you. Maybe it isn't. But you should be making that decision with actual math, not just with a slogan somebody repeated online. If filing a little earlier means several extra monthly payments now, that can change the equation, especially if cash flow matters more to you in the short term than squeezing out a somewhat higher monthly amount later. And there's another thing people forget: protective filing. Sometimes just contacting Social Security, depending on the circumstances, can preserve an earlier filing date or at least raise an issue worth checking. That is why details matter. A person who assumes they have no options may leave money on the table, while a person who asks one extra question may discover there is more flexibility than they thought. That's what I wish more retirees understood. This system is not intuitive. You are not failing just because it confuses you. The rules are layered, the categories overlap, and bad information spreads faster than careful explanation. That is exactly why you have to slow down and separate myth from rule. And honestly, one of the best parts of these conversations is that people help each other. A strong community can save someone from making a costly mistake simply by pointing them toward the right question. Not everybody gets an answer immediately. Not everybody can wait on hold for hours or sort through legal language by themselves. But when people start learning the difference between SSI and retirement, the difference between survivor benefits and spouse benefits, the difference between a headline and an official rule, then suddenly things become less intimidating. You don't need to know everything. You just need to know enough to avoid panic, ask better questions, and make decisions based on facts instead of fear. Now, beyond individual benefits, there is also a bigger picture that retirees need to keep in mind. Medicaid, food assistance, local aging services, and state-administered support programs are all affected by budget choices and policy decisions, and those decisions do not happen in a vacuum. People often focus only on the check they receive each month, but there are entire support systems around that check that matter just as much, especially for lower-income seniors, disabled adults, and families managing care needs. So when I say retirees must know what's happening now, I don't just mean one headline. I mean understanding that federal choices, state choices, and program rules all flow together. That's why I want people to become harder to fool. If somebody tells you your benefits are disappearing tomorrow, ask what program they're talking about. Ask whether it applies to retirement, SSI, SSDI, Medicare, or Medicaid. Ask where the rule came from. Ask whether the date is official or just speculation. Ask whether the video actually explained anything or just repeated panic words over and over. Because once you start doing that, a lot of the fake urgency falls apart very quickly. And that is the goal here. Not to make you scared. Not to make you dependent on drama. The goal is to help you protect your money, protect your decisions, and protect your peace of mind. So yes, there are changes retirees should watch. Yes, there are real funding issues, real filing strategies, real work rules, and real program differences that can affect what you receive. But there is also a mountain of noise out there, and too many people are getting buried under it. Don't let a flashy thumbnail make decisions for you. Don't let a fake expert rush you into panic. Learn the categories, learn the timing, learn what applies to your actual benefit, and keep asking questions until the answer makes sense. Because the people who do that are the people most likely to hold on to the money they earned, qualify for the benefits they deserve, and avoid becoming part of that missing billions problem in the first place.